Hello and welcome. In this new issue of the Caribbean Review, we will be proposing an overview of the latest news from around the region. Politics. In the coming weeks, the government of Colombia and the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, or FARC, could sign a historic peace agreement, thereby putting an end to internal armed conflict that has lasted over 50 years. Indeed, in the 1960s, after a period of civil war followed by military dictatorship, rural self-defense militias came together to create the FARC, a Marxist guerrilla group intent on fighting the Colombian authorities. This led to years of bloody conflict, with 260,000 deaths and millions of displaced, injured and missing victims. Nonetheless, the hope of a peace agreement has resurfaced, thanks to advances made during intense negotiations between both parties in late 2012 on the island of Cuba. More recently, in mid-May, the FARC agreed to remove thousands of underage fighters from their rank. The Colombian government and the FARC also agreed on the fact that the peace agreements will be enshrined in the constitution and their ratification the subject of a referendum. The successful outcome of the peace process will not, however, entail complete pacification, since another rebel group, the National Liberation Army, is still active. Moreover, Colombia will face multiple post-conflict challenges, chief among which are the demobilization and disarming of guerrillas, the recovery of lands occupied by the FARC, and compensation for victims, all in a climate of violence. In the field of politics, the FARC have already raised the possibility of forming a legal disarmed movement. From a scientific perspective, the liberation of jungle areas previously occupied by the FARC will allow for the undertaking of expeditions that have been impossible to date. Economy. Released last April by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the Panama Papers revealed a large-scale tax evasion scandal that shook the world. Millions of confidential documents listing more than 214,000 offshore companies and the names of their stakeholders show that the Greater Caribbean is at the heart of the globalized financial system. In fact, companies from over 200 countries own firms domiciled in territories of the wider Caribbean, primarily in the British Virgin Islands, Panama, and the Bahamas. They have discreetly transferred billions of euros to these firms, thereby eluding strict tax legislations in their respective countries. Among the major groups accused of having participated in this system, more than 500 banking establishments, such as the French Crédit Agricole, Société Générale, the Swiss UBS, Credit Suisse, the German Deutsche Bank, the British HSBC, and the American Goldman Sachs. What will the consequences be for the Caribbean territories that are involved? Singled out as tax havens, they've been subjected to intense political pressure and must continually assert and prove their willingness to fight tax evasion in order to avoid financial sanctions. Their economies continue to be particularly vulnerable to economic shocks, and their performance in terms of development has been mixed. GDP, inhabitant largely superior to the regional average on the one hand, while the human indicators remain extremely average.
Environment.
The Greater Caribbean is faced with considerable obstacles when it comes to finding a balance between growing needs for energy, reducing costs, and protecting its exceptional environment. Among the more popular solutions being examined is that of geothermal energy. Geothermal energy, which is produced by the earth and it's renewable, is of great interest to several Caribbean territories, including Grenada and St. Kitts and Nevis, who see it as a means of reducing their dependence on fossil fuels. To this end, from March 10th to 12th, St. Kitts and Nevis hosted a regional forum on geothermal energy in partnership with the Caribbean Community and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. The theme chosen, Opportunities and Synergies for Collaboration, was a clear indication of the objectives of the meeting, which brought together representatives from Dominica, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Lucia and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, islands that are all extremely interested in developing projects aimed at producing this type of energy. The Caribbean stakeholders have for many years been demonstrating a clear will to develop geothermal energy, but they're confronted with major financial and technical hurdles. As such, the Geothermal Caribbean Project, which was launched in 2012 and involved the building of a power station in Dominica that would provide electricity to Guadeloupe and Martinique, was stopped due to a lack of funding. French power company EDF, a long-time partner, withdrew from the project in 2013. Moreover, the buyout of the Bouillante power station by a private American group, Ormat Technologies, the first of its kind on a Caribbean island, along with a visit by elected officials and experts during the forum, seemed to suggest that regional cooperation is still capable of economic leveraging despite the difficulties. This has been the June edition of the Caribbean Review. Rendezvous in a few weeks.